So in the last video, we summarized this table, the 8 primitive data types that are provided by Java. What I want us to do now is go over each one and how do you create those variables. So when we want to create a variable, we need to go to RAM and we need to do two things. The first thing is we need to tell RAM the data type that we're going to be storing, so RAM knows how much space to give us. So when I'm going to RAM here, I'm saying, oh, I want you to give me a char. So it's going to go and say, oh, a char, you need just 1 byte. You just need 1 box. When I'm coming here, I'm saying, oh, I want to store a Boolean. It's going to say, oh, you need just 1 bit. I want to store a short. It's going to say, oh, well, that means I need to give you 2 bytes. So the first thing is, when we're creating a variable, we need to identify the data type. This tells RAM how much space it needs to give us. The second thing we need to identify when we're creating a variable is a name. So when I'm giving a name to my variable, it's going to allow me to use that name later to retrieve the value that's stored. So here I'm saying char. I want a char variable. We're going to call it addition. And then the equal sign is used to assign a value to this location. So what this is going to go do in RAM is go request space that is big enough for a byte. And it's going to say this is called addition. It's going to give it a label of addition, and it's going to put the plus symbol in there. Okay, that's what it's going to do. If I want to go and say I want a short called student count, well, a short needs 2 bytes. So it's going to go and get 2 bytes in RAM. It's going to say, okay, this is called student count, and I'm going to put the number 5,000 in there. And so later in the program, when I say, give me the student count, it's going to go and say, oh, that's 5,000. If I say, give me the character plus addition, it's going to give me back the plus. So what we're doing is we're going to RAM, requesting space. This is a char, and this is a short. So the char, the short, the int, the long, all that tells RAM how much space we need. And then we have a name so that we can retrieve this variable later. So that's the first thing we need to know when we're creating those variables. Okay. Now, sometimes when we're creating a variable, we know the value that we want to put in there. So I might know that I want 10 of something. So I can just say int count equal 10. Sometimes we might not know. So if I'm, let's say, asking the user, how many items did you buy? Well, I know I need a space to store that item, that number count. So I'm just going to say int count. And what this is going to do in RAM, it's going to go and give me 4 bytes. So that's space for an int. It's going to call it count. And at this point, there is nothing in this RAM space. So I requested space, but I didn't put anything in it. Later, when I come and I know what value I want to put in there, like let's say count equal 10, I can go and put a 10 in RAM there. So sometimes when you're creating a variable, you know the value that's going to be stored in there. And so you can create the variable and assign it a value. I'm assigning it the value 10. Okay, you can do that in one step. And sometimes you don't know. So sometimes you might create a variable and then later assign it a value. It might be on the next line, or it might be 20 lines down the road. Okay. Now, the nice thing in Java is that you can create multiple variables on the same line. So here I put int, and because I put int at the beginning, all the variables that are going to get created on this line are going to all be ints. They're all going to be 4 bytes long. And so I'm creating here a variable called count. Notice count doesn't have an equal sign after it, so that's going to create an int count with nothing in it. Num equal 10, that's going to go and create a space. Give it the name num and put a 10 in there. Then I'm creating one called length, but I'm not putting anything in there because there's no equal. So now I have length, but it has nothing in it. And I'm creating one called width, and I'm putting a 26 in it. Notice here that I am separating them with a comma. So let's go and try creating those in NetBeans. So here, what I can do is I can create some variables. So I can say, let's say int age equal to 10. And then I can maybe say short student count, and I don't know the student count. Later, I'll know that the student count is 24, so I'll put it in there. And then I can maybe put also a char, middle initial equal to M, and I want another char, which is my first initial equal to I, and maybe I also want last initial, but I don't want to give it a value right now. So we can create multiple variables. Here we created one int, here we created a short, but did not assign it a value, and here we created 3 chars that have values in them, and one of them doesn't have a value assigned to it. So this is the basic idea of creating variables. Now, how about if I want to print those variables? What can I do? Well, the system.out.println statement that we used with hello world, what it does, it takes strings, and then it can also take variables. And what we do is we put a plus in between the string and the variable. So here, if I want to print my age, for example, println, and I will say I am, and now here I am is a string, okay? After that, we're going to put a plus sign. I'm saying after the string, I want you to add to it or to append to it the word age, okay? And here I'm just going to change the sentence to be my age is, and then I'm going to put period. So what this is saying, it's saying to println, I want you to print the string my age is, and then I want you to add to the sentence the variable age, whatever is stored in it, and then I want you to add to that a period. So notice everything that is inside the quotes can be whatever you want. I could be my age is or some gibberish, okay? It could be whatever you want in there. That's not going to be checked by the compiler. What's going to be checked by the compiler in this statement is the variable that is not in quotes. So age is a variable that is there. See how it's highlighted in orange for me? And NetBeans is telling me that this is the variable that you are referring to, the one you created on line 29. So when I run this sentence, it's going to say my age is 10 because age has 10. So the variable is getting replaced with the value that is stored in it. If I come and I change my age to 78, now my print statement is also going to be reflecting that change. So whatever I'm storing in RAM in that variable, I can retrieve later. Now let's try putting a system.out here and say I have plus students. Now here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to print student count. And notice there's a red wiggling line under student count. There is something that it doesn't like. And the error message says variable student count might not have been initialized. It's saying you are trying to print student count, but you never gave it a value. You never initialized it. So Java is going to complain. The compiler doesn't like that. It's not going to let me run this code. It says I can't print something that you never gave a value to. So this is called the scope of a variable. This variable got created on line 31. However, it does not have a value until line 34. So I cannot be printing it. So when we print a variable, it has to have a value. So if I want to give it a value, I want to use it, I have to give it a value before I can start using it. I want you also to notice here when we were doing the first print statement, the word age appeared twice in my system.out. It appeared in the quotes and it appeared as a variable. Now, when it was inside the quotes, it got printed the word age as is. But when age is not in quotes, this is when we treat it as a variable. So make sure that when you are printing a variable, you don't put quotes around it. If you put quotes around it by mistake, you will get the actual word printed. You will not get the value. So now it says my age is age because you told it to print age in double quotes. So variables, when we're printing variables, we should not have any quotes around them. Now, system.out has two methods. It has a print method and a println method. And what I want us to do is I want you to notice the difference. So here we've used the println and it says my age is, let's change it back to 78. Okay. Now, instead of println, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this line and I'm going to just copy it and paste it again. And I'm going to change it to print. So instead of println, we're going to use print. And let's see what's the difference between those two methods. Notice here, after it printed the sentence, it did not go back and go to the beginning of the line. So notice how here, they're both printed on the same line. So what print does, it prints and then it stops. But println prints and then kind of presses enter. It's kind of like pressing enter on your keyboard. So if I want to put this one back again, the first one, the println, it printed the statement and then it pressed enter to go to the next line. So that's what println does. Print line. You're printing a line and that's it. You're done with the line, so you're going to the next one. Print will print and will stop. So I just wanted to point out that there are two methods that system.out has. One is called print and one is called println. We talked about trying to print unassigned variables. So here I have a variable called Java students and I'm trying to print it. It's not going to let me. It's not going to like that because I did not give a value to Java students. The other thing is when I was talking about scope is you cannot print or you start using a variable before you have declared it. So here, if I try, for example, let's move student count. Let's move it down here. It's not going to let me. Okay, so here you're trying to access a variable that you haven't even created yet in RAM. So here it's going to give you a different error message. It's going to say cannot find symbol. I can't find this variable. I went to RAM. I tried looking for student count. I can't find it. So when you get a message that says cannot find symbol, it's usually because you're trying to use a variable that you haven't created before, or you might have a typo. You bring this back and let's say count, I used a lowercase c. Instead, it's not going to find that variable either. It's going to say I can't find it because Java is a case sensitive language. Now Java, like I said, is a case sensitive language. So if I try creating another variable called age with an uppercase A, it's going to let me. No problem. So when we're creating variables, we should just create them all lowercase. You shouldn't have a mix of lowercase and uppercase because this is going to be confusing to you.